Well, the day has finally arrived. I never thought I would be making a video on this topic, but here it is. The Xbox One, after 12 years of being considered unhackable, has finally been exploited, thanks to Marcus Castellan and his new Xbox One Bliss hack. Now, we're going to talk about it more in today's episode and what this potentially could mean for the future of the Xbox One as far as things like opening it up for homebrew and preservation purposes. But I do first want to let you guys know that there is a really excellent security write-up that was done on the Reverse 2026 channel on YouTube, and it outlines the entire step of the process that Marcus went from start to finish to exploit the Xbox One. I'm going to leave a link to that in the description below. It is very, very technical, and I'll be honest with you, a lot of that stuff kind of went over my head, but it does kind of explain his thought process and how he went about hacking the Xbox One, and I think it's compelling viewing. So the first thing that I want to talk about is, why did it take so long for the Xbox One to get exploited? It was considered unhackable or uncrackable for years, right? So in 2019, Tony Chen from Microsoft did a presentation on the security aspects of the Xbox One, and it was considered to be unpenetrable because they ended up really kind of patching all the various weak points that they found on the Xbox 360 and made the system extremely secure. But I do strongly believe that another reason why the Xbox One took so long to be exploited is because of developer mode or dev mode. Now, dev mode is a sandbox that you can pay a subscription to get access to the features to develop your own software on. And this is something that I think took away a lot of the motivations to exploit the Xbox One, because you can indeed build your own homebrew applications and emulators and various things. There's already a dev mode community out there building UWP apps that run on Xbox One and Xbox Series processors. And the dev mode really kind of took out some of the motivation, in my opinion, to exploit the Xbox One. And I think the Xbox One really was a product of its time. When it released in 2013, it had a terrible launch. If you recall, Don Matrick was the head of Xbox at the time. It had the always online DRM policies. It also had just the TV approach. But the hardware itself was quite sophisticated, as Tony Chen outlined in his Xbox One presentation in 2019. And the big takeaway from that presentation was that the software can be patched at all times, but silicon cannot. And Tony Chen even noted in his presentation that the only mistake Microsoft could not recover from would be a bug in the Boot-ROM. But the Boot-ROM itself contained 0 bugs. So a software exploit in this caliber is considered impossible. The only way to proceed is to physically attack the Boot-ROM using a hardware attack. And that's exactly what Marcus did with his Bliss exploit. Now, his approach to exploiting the Xbox One Boot-ROM was to use a hardware glitch. Now, in the days of the Xbox 360, the RGH hack, it was something that you could basically run on any Xbox 360. You could glitch almost any Xbox 360 out there that had a reset pin, except for the later Winchester motherboards. But Microsoft was very clever to secure all these particular weak points on the Xbox One. For example, there is no reset pin found on the Xbox One. And the other important aspect of the Xbox 360 RGH was to slow down artificially the system clock to make the glitch timings easier. So these things were not on the table for the Xbox One at all. Now, Marcus's approach was to use a voltage glitch on the North Bridge rail. It's basically a hardware attack that temporarily shorts the processor's power supply to ground for a very small amount of time, and this causes the processor to make some type of mistake or put it into some type of undetermined state, like skipping a security check without fully turning off or rebooting the system. Now, the end result of this Bliss exploit is complete supervisor execution and decryption. And this means that all this is irreversible on Xbox One hardware. Once you've performed this modification, there is no way for Microsoft to come in and patch it after the fact. And according to the Cybersec Guru article, it executes before Microsoft performs any of its highly secure, irreversible cryptographic key transformations. It happens before any code revocation checks can occur. So once the Boot-ROM has been exploited, now we have the ability to dump the console's eFuses and all keys. It can also extract Microsoft's internal copyright strings from the Boot-ROM, as was showed in his demonstration. It also means that the various bootloaders can be fully decrypted, which means, in theory, potentially, we could start talking about things like custom firmwares. But the overarching thing here is that with the Boot-ROM exploit, things like the hypervisor, the game OS, the system OS, all of these features underneath are fundamentally compromised, and the hack will allow for decryption, loading, patching, and execution of unsigned code, which means if you're someone that's in homebrew, then you're starting to get interested in something like this, right? And because this is a physical hardware-based attack, it's impossible for Microsoft to patch via a security firmware update. Now, of course, this is 2026, and the Xbox One is considered old and out-of-date hardware, so why do we even really care about something like this? Well, we have to talk about things like preservation, right? The Xbox One, because it was unhackable for so many years, does have Xbox One exclusive games that are tied to the hardware. Now we have the ability to preserve those games. We can rip those games from disk as well as the hard drive, and those games can finally be preserved. And preservation is a massive thing here when it comes to the Xbox One. But of course, there are other things you can do with an exploited Xbox One in this fashion. Motherboards and corrupted NANDs can be previously restored. You can restore your Xbox One if it became a brick for whatever reason. You can decouple the optical disk drive from the system, which means that you can start replacing the disk drives with other ones. You can also do various MMC replacements. You can also fully restore and reprogram corrupted NANDs. And this is very interesting because Xbox One hardware is starting to show wear and tear, right? We're starting to get to the point where these systems will not start to turn on, they'll start to fail over time. And having the ability to do this is very exciting. It also means that the Xbox One store, which is still online to this day, but eventually, the Xbox One store, like the 360 store, may see its demise at some point in the future. So the ability to now fully decrypt games, applications, and preserve the entire store of Xbox One titles that were tied to the hardware and, basically preserve the 8th generation of gaming is very, very exciting. I think a lot of preservationists out there and archivists and historians are very interested in something like this. So what is required to mod your Xbox One? Well, the first thing is you need a 2013 Xbox One. I'm talking about the VCR models that released early on. So the later Xbox One S, as well as the Xbox One X and the Xbox Series consoles are not exploitable. The only one at this point that is exploitable is the 2013 Xbox One VCR. Now, to install and execute a Bliss hack on your Xbox One, you only really need a few things. You need a Raspberry Pi Pico or a Teensy. It's only a 3 to 4 wire mod as well, but you also need a basic MOSFET setup on the North Bridge, and you also have to remove some capacitors from beneath the board to allow the voltage to drop to hit the processor cleanly. Now, these types of things obviously would probably shy away a lot of people from modding their Xbox One. I do have an Xbox One VCR, and I am someone that is very interested in performing this modification, but I'm probably going to sit and wait a little bit until this process can be streamlined a bit. Usually when it comes to these types of exploits, when someone does release their exploit, there's always people in the community that come up with more interesting ways to exploit the system. So potentially we may be able to see some type of hardware mod kit that comes out, but I'm definitely interested in doing this myself. Now, you might be asking about the reliability of this glitch. How long does it take to actually glitch your Xbox One if you've installed your hardware mod? Well, the report here says that it could be from a minute to 30 minutes in a research environment. But it is said with proper refinement and by tweaking the glitch parameters, it could possibly see those boot rates drop down to a few seconds. So all of a sudden, this is a very interesting modification to make. And again, this is something that I'm very much interested in doing myself. And I think a lot of people out there that have Xbox Ones that have been waiting for a mod will be very excited about this report. But I'm going to leave it here for today's episode, guys. This was just a quick one. I did want to talk about this because a lot of people reached out to me and said, MVG, you really need to discuss the Xbox One exploit. I will leave various links to everything that I talked about in the description below, but I'm excited. Even though, the Xbox One is long dead and gone these days, having the ability to exploit the system and preserve your games and get access to unsigned code, which is outside of dev mode, which provides you with the full power of the hardware, is very exciting. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. We're going to leave it here for today's episode. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked it, please don't forget to leave me a thumbs up, and we will catch you guys in the next episode. Bye for now.